Welcome to the Past Lives Cafe. I am your host, Keone, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. Come with me as we journey through the spiral of time to forgotten places. Today I have with me Melissa Engerman. She had a very interesting past life experience that she had shared with me, and I thought it would be perfect to interview her for this podcast. But before we jump into that, let me tell you a little bit about her. Melissa grew up feeling the energy around her coming from trees and all living beings. She started working with universal energy in her 20s. Then she started training in different modalities of energy work in the early 2000s. Finally, last year in 2024, she was put in a position to build her own business. She started offering Reiki and is also now adding animal communication. You can find her at Reiki by Melissa, just as it sounds, .com. She is also Reiki by Melissa on Facebook and Instagram. She is a private practitioner at Tranquility Center.
There's a lot of different practitioners there doing massage, doing Reiki, so many different modalities, sound healing, and they also have a little crystal shop in there.
Have you noticed that a lot of people in your area are looking for Reiki and other types of energy work?
The place has been there a long time. Most of the practitioners have a really strong book of business already. So yes, it's definitely a busy place, but in a good way. It has a really wonderful energy, which is one reason why I love it and why I wanted to have my business there. When you're starting a business, it starts out slow. I'm still building it and have some clients, but it's still slow. A friend of mine who also practices out of there, we do different events in that space, and those have always been a good turnout. So we do a community Reiki where we set up tables for the people who are there, and then the two of us do Reiki on everyone that's there, just in the room, and that's been absolutely amazing. We just started intuitive development talking circle, and that was wonderful. And everyone actually asked us to do it more than just once a month, so we're going to be adding it to be twice a month. And then we also are starting our first evening with a manifesting meditation. We'll be doing that once a month. And it'll be helping people with information about how to manifest and helping people learning how to manifest or sharing different ways that different people manifest. It's so vastly across the board different. Same idea, but a lot of people do it in different ways. It comes down to what works best for you. So those events have been really great turnouts. The last thing that I did before this was working at an animal shelter. And although I loved it, it was very difficult, being that I could feel so much from the animals. And even though we treated them wonderful, the place I was at was really, we went beyond, not beyond what we should, because I think all shelters should do, beyond what I expected when I started at a shelter. It was still hard because the animals were still confused with things. I have wanted to step into what I'm doing now for so many years. I just fortunately was in a position where I was able to make the choice of what I wanted to do next. This is what I'm going to do, because if I don't do it now, I'm never going to. And really, so many years I have just known that this is what I needed to do. I needed to work with the energy. I needed to do something that was helping people. But I also, of course, really want to be helping the animals also. So, well, to me, animals and people, we're all animals. That's why I decided to also add in the animal communication. I'm helping both. Sometimes people aren't sure. They feel like something's going on with their pet and they're not exactly sure what it is. And so I'm able to connect with their pet and let them know what different things that happened. It's really exciting and it just feels really great to be able to help people. And even when I do Reiki with people, it's just wonderful to see their difference of how they look when they first come in to when they leave.
When did you know that you could communicate with animals?
I've never not communicated. It's always been. I didn't know it wasn't just a normal thing. I've always communicated with rocks, trees, pets, like everything. And I didn't know it wasn't what everyone did. And I do believe truly that everyone's able to, like the pretend friend that we have as a child, or we're told, oh no, that's just your pretend friend. That's not really there. But I do believe that everyone has the ability. I just, for some reason, didn't really shut it off or didn't share it so that I wasn't told to shut it off. I'm not really sure. So I've just always had it. And that was why people were coming to me, was just for questions about things going on in their lives. And it just became overwhelming to me. So I just shut it off. And then I guess in the early 2000s, started getting myself back into things and slowly have reopening everything back up. And then I went to training to help more control the animal communication part. And so even though I was able to, I didn't really have a lot of control of it. They would just come in whenever they wanted to. And I still sometimes do, but I'm able to more pinpoint it.
Focus and open when you're ready.
Yes.
And not when you're in the middle of a Reiki session or leading a class and you need to have your focus on that.
Yeah. And sometimes when I'm doing Reiki or doing a class, it is someone's guide that comes in or my guide to tell me something in regards to that session. So I, of course, still allow that in because I like being able to give people feedback if something came through.
I knew you were going to say that. When I've done energy work as well, sometimes, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Melissa, from hearing your experiences, that I will get, I call them hits, but just visuals and ideas and concepts on my way to the appointment. And
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, and it's like trying to figure out who this is relating to. One of the most recent appointments I had, I was just getting so many thoughts that I almost missed my turn. And so I know exactly what you mean by just having to be open and available to those kind of communications when it's most appropriate. But I don't
Exactly.
know how in the world you were able to work at a shelter. You seem like a very compassionate, empathetic individual to me. And I don't know how you manage that.
I think one of the biggest things for me, now I didn't work where animal control was involved, so I didn't have to work on that. I could not have done that. I think one of the biggest things that I learned was judgment. And that was hard because as humans, we judge. That's just what we're taught to do. And I learned that we're very good at making up stories that fit the scenario we think something is. I really had to learn to listen to what was going on, see if there's anything we can do to help them keep the pet, because it's not that these people are evil. They're put in these situations, and it's not that they planned on something, Yes, there are some people in the world who are just like, I don't want this dog anymore because I want this dog instead. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, but the majority, the stories were just heartbreaking. And it became looking at it in a holistic way. We would have people who became homeless and had been living in their car with their pet. It was getting cold out and they knew they couldn't keep doing that. And so they knew they had to bring their pet in. And then it becomes okay, do you have a place to stay also? Let me make some phone calls for you. So my team did this also, like mainly. This is what we did at that shelter. I didn't have to be in the area where the pets were all the time. And so there were days where I avoided it because I couldn't be in that energy. A couple years back, there were two dogs that were brought in and they were very confused. They caught on that I could understand them and I could not get them to stop talking to me. I would be home and they would just connect to me. It was just so difficult. I happened to be going away that weekend and I was an 8-hour drive away for 3 days. They didn't connect to me then. I don't know if it's because of the distance. I'm not really sure. I've done distance connecting before with people, so I don't know why. But The drive home, we were 3 hours away, and all of a sudden they were back in my head, and I just started sobbing because I was really hoping in that time that they had gotten adopted and they were still there. So I was just sobbing. This is horrible. Like just that I couldn't separate. But then at the same time, I was glad that they had me to communicate with. I guess this is hard, but yet it's helping them. It was hard for everyone because even if you don't realize that you're connecting to them on a spiritual level, you are. If you have that emotion, if you have that care to take care of them, that's another level of connection. That's not just you're physically there and I see that you need food, so I'm giving you food. Like you want to care for them.
In some of the animal control situations, even though we hate what has happened to the animals, people think they're doing their best. Especially I see that in the hoarding situations. They feel this need to help and save, and it just becomes uncontrollable to them. And I get that. I get that, where we don't often recognize our own limitations.
Exactly. We definitely get that, where we'll have someone who calls and they'll be, oh, my husband, girlfriend, wife, whatever, brought in this one cat that was pregnant, and before we knew it, now we have like 27 cats, and she won't do anything about it, but we can't live like this anymore. I don't know what to do. And so we have to try and give them whatever support we can. The public puts such a shame on pet owners, and I even hate that word owner, but who surrender a pet to a shelter. And they don't look at it as maybe this person is actually doing what's best for that pet because they can't care for it properly. So yes, it might be a scary situation, but unfortunately, at least in Maryland, I can't speak for other states, there's just not enough sources out there to help people. And people, even if there are sources, people don't know that they exist. I can remember actually someone left a pet on our property when we were not open. Sadly, that happens. But the person called and just said that they were in a situation, they had to do it right then. They were like leaving an abusive situation. They had to flee. So they left the pet. And they also were mortified that they did it. And they were like, I know you think I'm so horrible. No, we don't. We don't think you're horrible at all. You're doing the right thing. So it is like the society just makes it sound like if you can't keep your pet, you're this horrible person. But when you adopt a pet, you don't know what's going to happen to you in 5 years. So you're doing the best you can. There's been research that shows elderly people who can't afford food for their pets start feeding their food to their pet and then not eating themselves. Not saying that like the pets should starve, but like no one should starve. There's now programs that can help them, but they have to even know to reach out to someone. And that's part of it, is there's just not enough knowledge out there, enough advertising out there. And then again, it just becomes people's pride, which I can understand, and I can't fault them for that. That's what society has taught us.
I love that example where an elderly person or an unhoused person would feed them their last piece of food, giving them all they have, and is half of our food is no good for even us.
I know.
That's a whole other podcast. The fact that they would think to do that for their pet.
Yeah, I call myself a guardian to my pets. And I'll just quickly say, as far as resources, the best thing for anyone listening to this is to contact your local animal control or shelter. A lot of shelters now have really started focusing on how to help people keep their pets. And that's across the country.
I love that. Thank you. Now, the reason this is actually an excellent segue, the reason I mentioned wanting to have Melissa on this specific podcast is because one of the experiences I had with her in a group regression setting was her connection to a marine animal being. And I thought she would be a perfect person to speak to her experiences with past life regression. And so I wanted to ask you, Melissa, whether you think those lives were something that you actually lived, or maybe there were constructs or archetypes that you just connect with that manifested as a life. I'd love to know what your thoughts are around those experiences. So I turn it over to you to share with us.
Wow, I feel like that's a big question.
I only deal with big questions on this podcast. It's all about big.
Okay. I have had, besides the group session that we did, which was wonderful, and I'll say honestly, I wasn't sure in a group if I would even get anything because it's a different energy. So I was really glad that I could. But I have done a past life regression probably about 18 years ago. And then probably about 8 or 10 years ago, I had a reading and it was a past life reading. So that was like different. That was more my guides and her guides sharing stuff. I personally feel that the past life is something that really happened. What I was seeing is something that really happened and I experienced. I I can't say why I feel that way. It just is a like knowing, and it makes sense to me. The past life regression that I did about 20 years ago, some of the lives that I saw showed me things that I did where I can understand where now in my life I'm having to live without as much as what I had then. It kind of made sense to me then. I was like, okay, I understand then why I'm where I am now. I was never the head person, but I was their right hand person or something like that. Where now I'm just living my life. I'm not running a town or anything like that. But so it just made sense to me, which is something I also believe in, is that we're here to learn lessons and it's just a continuation of learning lessons. And then the reading that I had, the past life reading that I had about 8, 10 years ago, one of the things that she mentioned to me, and it, even when I think about it, I just get chills, but it was me returning to the ocean and all these beings from the ocean, like waving at me and saying hi and greeting me and just being so happy to see me. I'd been gone for a long time. And when I first heard it, I can remember feeling like I was going to cry. And I can even feel now my throat tightening up. Like it just makes me emotional thinking about it.
It's like I get the feeling of nostalgia.
Yeah, it is. And it really felt like this belonging that I had been longing for, that I didn't even know I was longing for, but apparently was longing for. And it just, I don't know, it just blew me away and was the most soothing thing I had heard of, and just being able to picture it. And because again, this was a reading, so I wasn't in a meditation seeing it. I was just being told this is what my guides are sharing. So go forward 10 years to a couple months ago, then we did the group regression. Again, because it was a group, I wasn't sure if anything was going to come through, because I do feel so many people's energies that I was worried that that was going to interfere with my own ability to sense anything. So we went through it and I ended up, and I can't remember a lot of it, but I was a being in the ocean and I couldn't really see myself. So I was trying to figure out what I looked like. And all I can really say is I wasn't a mermaid, but I was not just in the water. I could also live out of, not fully out of the water, but like my top part could be out of the water. Mm-hmm. So it was almost mermaid, but not a mermaid. I kind of, and even when I'm thinking of it now, I kind of feel like I might have been male, but I'm not sure. It might not have been any specific gender, actually. I'm not really sure. And I had a connection also with dolphins. So I don't know, whatever it was that I was might not exist anymore. It might be something that just, or us at this time doesn't know it exists.
I love that. Just because we can't identify it readily doesn't mean it didn't exist or
Yeah.
won't exist, right? I
Yeah.
love
Because
that.
this definitely, I feel like I started in the water. So I feel this was more the beginning of me as a being, like that time. So this was so long ago that it's very possible it doesn't exist anymore. Dinosaurs don't exist anymore. I don't know that it was that far back. Came out of our meditation and you were asking us about things, and I started saying it. If I even realized it right away that it was what I had been told so many years ago. I don't know if you recall if I commented about that or not. I definitely, at least in the time of talking and sharing my story, a previous life where I was in the ocean and being at the ocean, all the ocean life was welcoming me and so happy to see me. So to me, it was just really beautiful and freeing. And I can just see myself like bopping in the water, having the top part of me out, but just being vertical, I guess, like in the water. Yeah. So it's just a beautiful, comforting thought to me.
And I think the thing that makes you so special to talk to about this,
Hmm.
especially having what we would presume is a non human
Hmm.
experience, is that because you can communicate with animals, it's validation that animals, regardless of how complex or not complex, like we think of reptiles as an example, as not being as feeling or thinking as maybe elephants that we know mourn out loud for their young or for their partners. I think a lot of times we don't give animals the due feeling that they have. And yet you're someone that communicates with animals and can pick up on thoughts,
Hmm.
feelings. And you had originated and connected with that origin of a non human or an animal being,
Yeah.
I think is a really beautiful and powerful connection to your talents that you bring today.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That makes sense. I hadn't really made that connection. I did have another past life that was shared with me during the reading that I had had. And it
Hmm.
was, I was an orphan and some nuns raised me pretty much in this orphanage. And I didn't really have any friends. It was just me and them. I think there were other kids, but I never really fit in with them. And as an adult, I friended a monkey. And that was what I did for a living. This monkey was my everything. And he would do tricks and things in the street. So I would make money. And it came down to a situation where I had to choose between this woman I loved or the monkey. I ended up being alone and getting myself back to the orphanage where I reconnected with them and I died there alone. But the whole thing with the monkey, and the monkey was my everything. That was my friend. It was my family. It was my money making, everything. And that stood out to me also of my connection now with animals. But I had never thought about like where I originated, yeah, being the ocean. And that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And actually, I'm thinking as your origin, the fact that you were aware as an origin of marine animal, and
Mm-hmm.
then that progression, that connection to animals continue to exist, and then using your connection with the monkey as not just family, friend, companion, but steward of also that animal, but also your ability to make a living and how that weaves into your current life as working at a shelter for other animals is kind of mind blowing. Looking at that thread and
Yeah.
how it's been woven through these different stories and
Mhm.
how you're living today
Mhm.
is pretty amazing. Did
Yeah.
you find that that past life reading or the regressions that you experienced, did you find them to be healing in any way?
Yes, I did. I feel like they explained some things to me. Like the regression that I did about 20 years ago, it was a lot longer than what we did as a group. It was just different because it was just the one on one. So I went through, I think, three different lives. And then the reading that I had, that was a couple hours long too. So it went through a couple different lives. So I've been able to like see a lot of different past lives that I've had. And they've just, I think they have helped give me answers, helped see what healing I might need to work on. I can't remember when it started where I just believed in past lives and reincarnation and all of that. But to me, it was the proof. And I know some people might think, oh no, how do you not know you weren't just dreaming? But you can like feel it in you. I don't really know how to explain that unless you experience it. But you just, yeah, you can feel it inside of you. And even like the story with me being some kind of marine life, it gives me chills. It gives me this feeling inside of me. And so it just, where I know, okay, that was real. But it also just helps me to know, okay, well, for one thing, it makes me less afraid of death, in all honesty, because I know, okay, I'm going to be able to continue. Like, my soul will continue, and whatever work I'm doing will continue. It just might be in a different form or a different aspect. But that to me just helps comfort me. And then also it helps comfort me because I have had pets who have come back to me that I just have felt like they were a different pet from before in my life. If I can come back, why can't they come back? And I do believe that we're not just reincarnated as me as a female. I'm not only going to be reincarnated as another human female. I know I've had multiple past lives where I was men. And then as I'm sharing a past life where I was a marine animal at least once. So I realized that yes, our pets can come back and they might be a cat from a different life or they could be just whatever.
That is healing, right? I only know a handful of people who say, I'm
Mhm.
ready to shed this physical body and move on.
Yeah.
And I know more people who have mourned the physical loss of a dog, a cat, a
Mhm.
horse, a goat, even fish, right? My
Yeah.
sister, who's allergic to so many things with
Wow.
fur and hair, her connection is tangibly to birds. She loves birds. And I don't know how many birds you would get at shelters, but birds are one of those things, especially ones that are loud, that people don't know what they're in for and how long they can live. I think knowing that, and that's just my little aside to anyone who's looking to get a bird, please research how long they live and be around a bird for a period of time to hear how loud they are. Because
Mhm.
if that's something that is bothersome to you, better to know that up front.
And they're a lot to take care of. People think, oh, just put them in a cage. No, they need exercise. They need stimulation. They can't just sit in a cage. Any pet, research.
Knowing that the animals that we're stewards of can end up coming back either as friends that we had or as a previous animal that we have, I think is healing in a way. I have one cat who I swear was a dog. I just know it because he has very many behaviors that are dog like.
Yeah.
He is feline at the top and the bottom. No, he doesn't bark, but the bird does. The bird barks right after the dog does. But I believe you when you say that there is a common connection between animals that can come back. And that does make me feel better.
Yeah, I have a cat right now that he had actually been abandoned at the shelter I worked at during COVID, during the world shutdown. And he was very young, probably under a year, and we took care of him. One person specifically took care of him for a couple years until he finally got comfortable to come and let us touch him. And then he got injured, so we had to bring him into an office to get healed. And then it got to a situation where he can't go back outside, and I brought him home. He's my heart right now. But I started realizing that I kept calling him by a previous cat that I had, who also was my heart. And one day I said the other cat's name out loud, and he turned to me, and I'm like, "You're Gusto, aren't you?" And he just looked at me, and then he turned around. And so I started randomly at different times. Instead of saying his name now, I would say Gusto, and he would look at me. I would say other things with like a Gus, try to see if is he responding to other things, and he wouldn't pay any attention to me. And then I would say Gusto again, and he'd look at me. Okay, this makes sense, because he does also some things that Gusto used to do, and has the same eyes, amazing green eyes. It's just interesting, and I don't necessarily have proof, but to me, I was just like, that was interesting enough, and just the fact that I keep wanting to call him Gusto, where my other cat, I've never done that with, you know?
I think the one thing you said, which is super important for anyone who is questioning whether their past life, whether they had a regression or they're having a memory, is that if you have a knowing, that can be super hard to validate
Mm-hmm.
because there is no research, there's no proof, there's no statistic. At least with your cat, he responded to the former cat's name, right?
Yeah.
But when you just have a knowing that something resonates with you, what does it hurt to believe it?
Mhm. Gettysburg is just a place that I've always enjoyed going to. When I'm having like a rough time with things, it's where I like to go and get away to, which I know seems weird to go to a war field. And like, that's my peaceful place. But
Melissa, I'm never messing with you on a bad day. Find her at the battlefield holding a sword.
in my young 20s, I just remember being really upset about something that was going on in my life. And so I went to Gettysburg for the night, and I went to one of the fields. And all of a sudden, I didn't really feel like myself, but in my head, I just kept saying over and over again, "You need to find his blood. You need to find his blood. It's here. You need to find his blood." And I'm just walking around looking. What am I looking for? And I just in my head kept getting that. But then like me, I kept being like, what? Okay, no one's blood is still here from the war. Like, what am I doing? And so then I finally was like, all right, I'm walking away. And I went to one of the cemeteries. And as soon as I walked into the cemetery, this huge wind came at me. And I was like, without even knowing what I was doing, walking over to the Pennsylvania section of, because they're buried by what state they were from. And I started looking, and I'm like, what am I looking for? Again, I was doing something without having the control of what I was doing. But in my head, I'm like, what am I doing? And then I just snapped out of it. That was so interesting. But it very much felt like I was looking for a loved one's blood, which was very weird, very gruesome. I've never experienced that before. It wasn't me. Like, I didn't have control of myself. I was walking in ways without even being aware of where I was going. Luckily, there wasn't a road right where I was walking. But yeah, so I think past life things comes to us in so many different, because I really believe if it wasn't my past life, I was at least picking up someone else's energy that was once there. It was still a life that happened before. We're all energy, and our past life is still energy that exists there, and it's within our DNA and everything. I feel like it can come in so many different forms, whether it be something like that, past life regressions that you do, or having a reading from someone who's telling you a past life. I think for everyone, it's going to come differently if they want to see it. I think sometimes people see it and don't know what it is that they're seeing. They think they're just having a dream, or, oh, it's because I watched that TV show before. And yes, it could be because of a TV show or a conversation you had, but also that could have opened something that allowed you to see a past life that you're supposed to see, and you just weren't ready until then. There's just so many different things. And I think through my life, with all the things I've seen and experienced, I have just gotten to a point where I'm like, I can't say no to something. Like, I can't say no, that doesn't exist, because I don't know. If someone says that they've experienced something, just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so if anything, if it's something that seems really cool to me, I then become jealous that I haven't experienced that myself. But I usually don't want to know more about it. Like,
Right.
I don't feel like I can say, oh, that doesn't exist, because people would look at me and what I do or what I say and be like, that is ridiculous. None of that exists. And I know it does, because I experience it. I see it. I feel it. Yeah.
I agree with you. When I hear someone say ghosts don't exist, and I said, how do you know? And they say, I've never seen one. And I say, do you see air? You breathe it. Does that mean it doesn't exist because you don't see it? It's keeping you alive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Agree with you 100% in that the more open minded we can be, the more I feel the world reveals to us.
Yes.
So, one more question. What would you say to someone who is thinking about getting a past life regression? Maybe similar to you, feel a connection to Gettysburg, even the battlefield portion of it. Would most people go seeking that out? But for some reason you did, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up in a town right beside Gettysburg, and it is full of people throughout the year looking to either connect with history or ancestors, or maybe just that feeling of connection or knowing that Abraham Lincoln had ridden through that town. So there's all kinds of seekers for whatever reason. And so what if someone is looking into getting a past life regression, whether they think maybe they may have lived during the Civil War in a specific place or not? How would you recommend, as someone who has open communications and is able to kind of drop in, how would you recommend that they pursue it so that they have a successful regression?
I would say a couple things. If it's someone who meditates, I would say meditate on it and see if this is clearly something you should do now, or if it's something that maybe you need to do some personal work prior to going. So maybe you need to wait a few months. And of course, that depends on the person. I think of whether I'd say that or not. But also, I think for anyone, I would say take a moment to sit and write out a couple questions. Like, what is it that you're trying to answer for yourself? What is it you're trying to find out? And it could be that it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to find out. That means you should be doing it. But just because you don't feel pulled to it doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. But then I also would tell someone, definitely, yeah, I think it's good to do word of mouth. And I had already, before we did the group, the person who set that up had seen you already individually. So I knew that you were someone I could trust. You were someone's energy I could trust being with, and all of that. And I think before that, we were already connected on Facebook and didn't even know.
I think you're right.
Yeah, yeah, that was so funny because I remember seeing you and I was like, I know your name. Why do I know your name? But
That's true. But to your point, to find somebody, because it's hard oftentimes, I think, even in a group session, like you were saying, to be able to relax enough to drop in unless you have a trust level.
exactly. And that's why I think it's important to do word of mouth. I mean, you can do research, look online and see, but I think everyone's type of energy is different. So if there's someone that you feel comfortable with their energy, talk to that person, see if they've done it, see who they go to. Because if they feel safe with someone and you feel safe with them, I think group's great. I think if you want to be able to go deeper, and I think that individual is a really wonderful experience. But again, group is also good. If you're really unsure and you want to start with something smaller, and I don't want to say it's smaller, but just the time frame is smaller or shorter, you can start with that. But also, I would say make that appointment, because once you make that appointment, you're letting the universe know that you're ready and it's going to start opening up things for you. And that's really, even if you've already written your list of what you're looking for, what you are hoping to answer, what you're hoping to find, after you make that appointment, the universe is open. So things are going to start opening for you. Go back to that list and go to it a couple times. Doing one-on-one, bring the list with you, because that will really help you. And it'll also help the person who's guiding you into the past lives that might be able to help answer those questions.
Those are excellent, excellent tips. You're the first person that has mentioned writing your questions, because what are we doing there? We're setting an intention, right? Yeah. Some people, you're right, absolutely. They just have curiosity. They just feel like they need to know something. But there are people that have specific things that they are looking to delve into. And what better way to set the universe in alignment than to get those intentions either out on paper or out in an email, whatever it takes to put that energetic request out there. I love that.
I think even if it's someone who doesn't know their questions, they're interested, even writing that down. I'm open to whatever it is that comes, any messages that I might have from past lives. Like even just writing that down, that is also an intention.
It's an extremely powerful way to connect with your session, to connect with your higher self, and also to set the expectation for success. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah.
So I am going to make sure that everybody in the whole world knows how to get in touch with you for animal communication, for energy work. Are you in the future going to teach people how to communicate with animals? Because I think that would be extremely wanted. And I wouldn't be surprised if that would be a big connector.
I've had a lot of friends tell me to. I have thought about it. Maybe one day I will do it. But also for anyone who is interested, there are programs out there. I would be careful as to which ones you're looking at. I would make sure there is a teacher, not just a book.
I thank you and honor you so much for coming and sharing your experience with me, and for extending the connection that you and I initially made. And I really look forward to being in touch with you in all kinds of different ways in the future. So namaste, my friend.
Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in my services, visit me at www.quantumjourneygo.com or drop me a note at pastlivescafe.buzzsprout.com. Stay well and be present.